All right, let's jump right in. Today, we're going to dig into the roots of how modern websites are built by looking at a classic team-up, servlets and Java Server Pages, or JSPs. Now, if you build anything for the web, understanding how we first solved this big problem of separating the thinking part from the looking good part is absolutely key to getting why we do things the way we do now. So let's start with the big question. How does a website manage to do all its complex thinking? Processing an order, checking a password, pulling stuff from a database, while also presenting you with a clean, good-looking interactive page. They sound like totally different jobs, right? Well, it turns out the best way to handle them is to treat them as exactly that. To really appreciate the solution, you've got to understand just how bad the problem was. In the early days of the web, the code for a site's brains and its beauty was all jumbled together in one big, tangled mess. And for developers, that was a massive headache. Seriously, just imagine trying to write a complicated recipe and decorate a wedding cake at the same time, using the same bowl for everything. That's kind of what it was like. You'd have code for calculating shipping costs mixed right in with the HTML that defined the color of a button. It was slow, a nightmare to debug, and trying to update anything? Forget about it. So, out of all of that chaos, a much smarter way of thinking started to emerge. This idea of deliberately separating your concerns. And to do that, two specialized Java technologies really came into the spotlight. One built to handle the logic, and another built to handle how everything looks. First up, we've got the servlet. This is the brains of the whole operation. It's a pure Java program that lives on the server, and its job is all about logic. It catches requests, crunches the numbers, and applies all the business rules. You can think of it as the direct ancestor to all the back-end controllers and API endpoints that power the web today.
And on the other side of the coin, you have the JSP, which stands for Java Server Page. This is the face of the application. A JSP file looks and feels a lot like a regular HTML file, and its only job is to take some data and make it look pretty for the user. It's basically the forerunner of all the modern server-side templating tools and UI libraries we use now.
So, we have the brains and the face. Let's put them side by side to really get a handle on their different jobs and see why this split was such a game-changing idea. And when you look at it this way, what's so cool is how perfectly their roles complement each other. The servlet is the controller, right? It's written in pure Java, built for all that heavy lifting. The business logic, the data processing. The JSP, on the other hand, is the view. It uses that HTML-like code that's way easier for a front-end designer to work with. It's a programmer's tool versus a designer's canvas. Okay, so I said showdown, but it's not really a fight. It's actually the origin story of a really powerful partnership. Their differences are exactly what make them work so well together. So let's walk through how this team-up actually plays out. You can see this teamwork in action every time you click something on a website. So, say you click a link. That request shoots off to the server, and the servlet catches it. The servlet does all the thinking. Maybe it queries a database or runs a calculation. Once it has all the data it needs, it doesn't try to build the web page itself. No. Instead, it packages up that data and hands it off to the right JSP. The JSP then acts like a template, plugs in the data, and generates the final HTML page that gets sent back to your browser. Simple as that. Now, this elegant separation of jobs, this partnership between a logic handler and a presentation template, it wasn't just some clever trick somebody came up with. It's actually the real-world example of a very famous time-tested design pattern. It's a true master blueprint for building applications that can scale. In fact, this whole architecture is so important that it was given a name that has shaped web development for decades. And I guarantee you've heard it before. Yep, the Model View Controller Pattern, MVC. This is the big one. This is the concept that didn't just define the Java web world, but became the foundation for countless other massive frameworks, from Ruby on Rails to Django and so many others. So let's connect the dots here, because we've actually been talking about MVC this whole time. The view, well, that's the JSP, the ancestor of our modern UI components. The controller, that's the servlet, the forerunner to today's API handlers. And the model, that's just the application's data that the controller works with. By splitting things up this way, you get an application that's organized, scalable, and just way, way easier for a team to build and maintain. And this really gets to the heart of it all. This idea isn't just a style choice. It's a core philosophy. It's what allows back-end developers to focus on data and APIs, while front-end developers can focus on creating an amazing user experience. they can work at the same time, which is how you build the huge applications we rely on today. This classic MVC team-up between servlets and JSPs laid a foundation that we are still building on top of. And that brings up a really interesting question, right? How have modern ways of building things, from microservices to component-based front ends, evolved the spirit of this pattern? What does separation of concerns look like on the web today? Something to think about. Thanks for digging into this with me.